how you develop a great staff survey. When I work with clients on their strategy and their performance, one of the areas they want to monitor is staff and how engaged staff are, how happy they are. So we very quickly come to the topic of staff surveys. Check out my other video in which I summarize the 6 biggest mistakes companies make with staff surveys. If you want to check out what I think is going wrong with them, in this video I want to focus on how you do this better and how to avoid some of the key mistakes. For me, number 1 has to be that we are starting our staff survey with our true information needs. Instead of going around and just randomly collecting possible questions you can add to your staff survey or simply subscribing to a standard staff survey that is already out there, I think it's absolutely vital to look at your business strategy and say, okay, in terms of our business and our current HR challenges and goals, what do we want to know? And every business has completely unique challenges at any given point in time. So it's absolutely vital that we start tracking some of those. So for me, your business goals have to be the starting point. And then ideally you would develop unique questions. You design your own questions that reflect the information needs that you have about your people in your organization at this point in time. My second bit of advice is to make this as short as possible. So the fewer questions you have, the better. The best staff surveys that I have seen have less than 3 or 4 or 5 questions. They're really good. If your staff survey ends up with 30, 40 questions, you seriously need to rethink this. This is causing too much work for everyone, it's not focused, and is very unlikely to be linked to your strategic challenges. My third bit of advice is that we need to do our surveys more regularly. And so instead of doing this once a year, which happens most often, or sometimes even less frequently, we need to do our staff surveys on a monthly basis. But then you think, okay, if I got a staff survey every month, it would really hack me off. So what you do is you sample your workforce. So if you have, let's say, 500 employees, you send a small fraction of them a survey every month. So hopefully over the year you get everyone, but every month you get some information back that helps you to understand trends so you can react to things much earlier when they're bubbling up, instead of at the end of the year when you realize you had 12 months of problems and by the time you find out it might be too late. So doing more of these pulse surveys, giving people the ability to regularly comment, is much more important. My fourth bit of advice is to look at the organizational culture and really create a culture of openness and transparency where you are actually happy to listen to what people have to say. There are lots of organizations that actually are not really interested in what people want to say. They're doing a staff survey to build their employer brand. They want to hear that they're great, but actually they don't really want to learn from this. If you establish a culture of really learning from this, where people feel that actually they are open to what I have to say, they're listening to this, they will act on this, this is a key to a good employee survey. So you want to develop this trust and openness and learning culture. Which brings me to my final point, that we need to demonstrate value to the people that are completing the survey. So if I spend some time giving feedback on what I think is good in the business and what isn't good about the business and what I feel is working well for me and it isn't, and then nothing ever happens to this, then I'm very unlikely to ever do this again. So what we need to do is we need to communicate back the results of the survey and the insights, and most importantly, what you're going to do about this. So this is, again, this way you are facilitating this culture of openness. So when you get your staff survey back, share the results openly, say this is what has come back, and then discuss what you need to do differently. A really great example, I was working with a client, they conducted a staff survey, then actually got everyone into one big town hall meeting, said these are the results, what do you suggest we now do differently? So everyone felt they really, really engaged in this process to discuss this, and out of this came an action plan that was put into practice to really make a difference. I've worked with lots of clients, helping them make this process better. One of the banks I've worked with recently, they got rid of their standard 50-question staff survey. They replaced this with a very simple 3-question survey that is now run on a monthly basis, where they sample the workforce, where they say, okay, how likely are you to recommend us as an employer to a friend? What do you think is particularly good about being employed here? What do you think we could do better? Based on this, they then really gained some interesting insights around things like meetings and how well they were run. And another part of the survey indicated that the canteen was not great. So what they then did is they installed these happy or not terminals that you sometimes see it in airport toilets and so on, where you basically say, was this meeting a constructive meeting? And then you place those at the end of the meeting room, and then people could give feedback. They did the same in the canteen. And together, those really give them an amazing insight. They now have a 3-question staff survey and really ongoing feedback on some of the key issues they've identified, and they're addressing them. And this is, for me, a good example about thinking, what do I really need to know? And how can I then use this information to improve the performance of my business? So hopefully you will be able to put some of these into practice to make your staff surveys more successful for your business.